So I am extremely excited to have back our very first guest from our very first mixer, I think almost a full year ago, Orli Shaham, who is not just an incredible, amazing musician, but obviously has a wonderful Pacific Symphony connection as the director of the Café Ludwig series. And I feel so honored and privileged to be able to call her a friend and a partner in music mischief. Um, and oh, Judith, thank you for the question about the fountain. We are going to get to that in just a second. Very timely. Orli, for those of you who don't know, is just an absolutely world-renowned, world-class, amazing pianist. She has soloed with more orchestras than you could shake a stick at, every group you could think of. She's also collaborated with all sorts of amazing contemporary composers. She's just incredible. And like I said, she runs the Café Ludwig series here with Pacific Symphony. It has a really special place in the hearts of all of our Pacific Symphony audiences. And even though she's in New York, we've been able to maintain this connection through a variety of projects that we're going to get into today during the course of the pandemic. So Orli, thank you so much for being here.
Ben, it is such a pleasure to be here with you. I can't tell you. You know how much I love making music with you and just even getting to talk with you, even in front of an audience like this. Really nice. Thanks for having me.
Well, any day I get to chat with Orli is an amazing day. So I'm very excited. And just a reminder for everybody as we get going, if you have any questions for Orli throughout the hour, there's a Q&A button at the top of the screen that you can put your questions there. We will see them there. If you're more comfortable putting them in the chat function, we will see them there. And I will try to moderate those and get as many as we can get to Orli during the hour so we can chat about the questions you guys have. So just to get us started, Orli, can you tell us a little bit about that picture and the little sort of detail in the bottom corner that we were just chatting about?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to say about that picture. Like one of those is that I'm so glad I had that photo session, before I put on the COVID-19. That
Oh my
is,
God.
I was looking at that. It's October of last year. Wow. Amazing. I'm so glad we got that session in. And then, so this is a fountain, the Bethesda Fountain in Central Park, one of my absolutely favorite places in New York. And I really wanted to have a photo session here and in fall and autumn, those colors. And it's really, I never even noticed because I'd never seen it so big on a screen that the fountain restoration, the little plaque in front says it was made possible through the generosity of Lucy G. Moses. And that's actually a name that's really important to me because the Lucy Moses School, which is the largest community music school in New York, is part of the Kaufman Music Center, and I'm the board chair at Kaufman Music Center. So this is a place that's really close to my heart. And I knew that they were an incredible family and wonderful donors and very thoughtful about the New York community experience, but I had not realized they also donated to this.
Yeah, it's very cool. And I just think it's just, I don't know, fun little Easter egg in that picture. So I wanted to get started, for those of you who follow along with the Thursdays at 7 series that the Symphony's been doing, which is the sort of weekly digital concert series that some new footage that we've been recording over the past few months to stay in touch with our audiences and some sort of best hits from the archives. Tomorrow night is going to feature Orli's performance of the Mozart 17th Piano Concerto that she played with Pacific Symphony maybe 4 seasons ago-ish.
That sounds about right.
So for those of you who have YouTube, check it out tomorrow at 7. Orli, can you tell us a little bit about the piece and sort of your memories of doing that performance with Carl and the musicians?
Well, I mean, that was a very special concert for me in all sorts of ways. First of all, I have been, the pianist and the host for Café Ludwig for 13 years now. But that was the first time I actually got to solo with the orchestra and play. We played the concerto in a couple of different contexts, but it was so wonderful. All these people that I play chamber music with and that I'm so close to, so, one-on-one and, real personal connections with, in that to be then part of the group and have that connection. There are very few orchestras that I feel I have that much of a personal connection to the players. I know you guys, Ben, you and I have dinner after concerts, we've worked through some of the most difficult sonatas in the repertoire. We've really challenged ourselves to get that ritardando together. you know, so that feeling of being on stage for a concerto with so many people who really feel like family and really just feel such a musical home, and then to be able to do that with Carl, who's such a wonderful collaborator, really very special concert for me.
Well, I'm very excited that we all get a chance to see it again. Um, and that also sort of ties in, last time when you were a guest on our first mixer, we were talking about your Mozart recording project and the midweek Mozart project that has sort of emanated from that. And I'm excited to sort of check back in now that it's a year later. And obviously there have been more videos. COVID has gone on way longer than maybe a lot of us expected it to.
Yeah.
So I just want to revisit that a little bit and then sort of talk about the developments that have happened since then. So can you just refresh us on what the Mozart project the recording project has been, and sort of how you got the initial inspiration to do that?
Yeah. So I started almost 2 years ago now. I started recording all of the solo Mozart piano sonatas. There are 18 of them, and they're pieces that I've lived with really my whole life. My teacher always, when I was growing up, he always had me playing a Mozart sonata, and I would, when I would get bored with the one I was supposed to work on, I would kind of flip through the book and sight read my way through others. And uh, they feel very much like home. And they're pieces that don't get played in recital all that often. So at one point, I thought, I really miss them. And I play so many of the Mozart piano concerti. I really do that a lot. It would be interesting to come back to the sonatas. And I started to take a look at them. And I realized that I had always thought about them as individuals, oh, there's that sonata, oh, there's the C major, oh, there's the D major, oh, there's that C minor, And when I started to look at the 18 of them as a whole and as a unit, I realized that they provide an incredible insight into Mozart's life as a composer, into his connection to the keyboard and pianos, and to the incredible innovation that was happening in piano fortes in that time. The earliest sonatas, it was, him first leaving Salzburg, his tiny little hometown, and discovering pianos that were being built by other makers, maybe had slightly different mechanisms, maybe had a pedal that he'd never seen before, or more notes. Some of them, had more notes than others. There was no regulation. It was the Wild West of piano making at that time. And that's the beginning of it. And then, these sonatas run pretty much to the last couple of years of his life. So really, they run from his earliest first fruits as a composer through to his complete maturity, and everywhere in between there are lots of stops. So I knew that I didn't want to just record a few sonatas. I wanted to record that journey in some way. And not last summer during the pandemic, but the previous summer, I recorded 12 of the 18 sonatas. It's an intense thing to record 12 sonatas. It takes it's sort of 3 really intense days to record 6 sonatas. So I did 2 3-day sessions at the wonderful Mechanics Hall in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is a place I just love to record in. And I thought, this is great. I've got 2/3 of them done, no problem. And because of the way pianos work and humidity works and halls work, we really wanted to record the last 6 at the exact same time of year. So it would be the same level of humidity and the same kind of sound, so that the overall sound would be similar for all the sonatas. So of course we were scheduled for August of 2020. And when last you and I spoke on one of these mixers, I think it was June, I was telling you that I wasn't sure yet. It didn't look promising for having the last session. And amazingly, we managed to finish up the recording of the last 6. The number of innovations that we put into place to make that recording happen. This was still August. It was still pretty early, even for the music field, in terms of how to do all these things. So we actually had to upgrade the internet for Mechanics Hall ourselves, which they've made great use of afterwards, which is wonderful. In order to make it possible, my producer, who normally would be upstairs, listening, and who I could collaborate, was in Cleveland. We used about 28 apps to make this project happen. And the whole thing was going really pretty smoothly the first day, despite the apps and the distances. And, my engineer had to drive in from one place in quarantine. My piano technician was not allowed to stay overnight because of where she was coming from, the state she was coming in from. I had to, I mean, it was just nuts. And we all stayed in our separate spaces with our masks. And I'm talking to my producer through WhatsApp, between takes about what's going on. But everything was going great the first day, and then the second day, I was recording the C minor sonata, which for me is really one of the most emotional, most powerful. Mozart in a minor key is always just like being hit in the head with a very powerful instrument. And I did a straight through take of the first movement, and I didn't hear anything back from her. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to do another take. I did a second take, and I didn't hear the producer. I'm used to, like, part of the collaborative process of recording is the producer will come and say, oh, that was a nice take, and they're usually very nice and generous and very reassuring, like, oh, you did really well. Nothing. Turned out the entire internet for like a 4-block radius had gone completely out. So she hadn't heard a thing. Amazingly, the engineer had recorded it, so at least it wasn't lost. But there was nobody to give feedback or anyway, it took us about an hour and a half. Our engineer did an incredible job working through, believe it or not, cellular technology in order to hook us all back up. And we were able to finish the recording session. So I have recorded all 18. The first volume is already out, and the second one should be out this summer, and it will end up being 5 volumes.
Wow. That is, first of all, amazing, and congrats on finishing. I think
Thank you.
Story you just told is so amazing for 2 reasons. One, it shows sort of the miraculous power of technology and that you could still assemble that during a pandemic and sort of remotely do that. But then also shows you like just how beholden we are to that technology when something doesn't go quite right. It's like total blessing and curse.
I think it's a perfect little microcosm for what we've been feeling during this pandemic, is like the incredible high of, wow, I'm on the stage of Mechanics Hall playing my favorite Steinway. I just played through the first movement of one of my favorite Mozart sonatas, and oh, so high, and wait, where's my producer? The deflation.
Yeah, totally. And so you mentioned this hall, Mechanics Hall, which is in Worcester, Massachusetts, which, sort of among performers is highly revered for its amazing acoustics. But I think to most people, if you said the word Mechanics Hall in Worcester, Massachusetts, they'd say, wait, what? And like, if you hear about like, Orli Shaham or Yo-Yo Ma, or like whoever recording there, can you just tell us a little bit about what makes that hall special and why musicians love to record there?
It's an older hall. It's from the 1800s, and it's all made of some stunningly beautiful wood, very open spaces. And what that means is that it just rings with a sound that is remarkable. And like I say, especially in summer when it's more humid and that wood is really feeling alive. And to me, there's another aspect of it, which is maybe equally important, which is the Steinway that is in that hall is probably one of my favorite pianos on the planet. And that's partly because of the piano itself, and partly because it's maintained by Barbara Renner, who's my absolute favorite technician. And it was her baby, this piano. So when I was first shopping around for halls, my producer sent me around to try a couple of different places. And when I sat down at that piano, I literally just stayed there for 3 hours before I, said, yeah, this is the one. I mean, I knew it was the one after 2 minutes, but I didn't want to leave.
I mean, I honestly can't imagine, as a flutist who can take my flute and store it under the seat in front of me on the plane, like the idea of especially doing something as intimate as like a solo recording project that's that extensive, to have an instrument that's not like your instrument. I can only imagine how nice it must be to then find one that you really can connect with and love, and get to do something like this on. That's amazing.
So lucky, really great.
So sort of then what, as I understand it, what sort of sprouted out from the recording project of all of the sonatas was this midweek Mozart project. And could you tell us a little bit about that? Was that directly because of the pandemic, or did it sort of have a life aside from that?
Absolutely a pandemic project. In April of last year, as things were completely sort of shut down and feeling very very uncertain and also very unpleasant. Everything, nothing felt good or right. And my producer Erica Brenner and I were starting to work on editing that first session, And I suddenly said, you know, what people need right now is movements of Mozart. They just need a movement a week to try to make their lives better because it's helping me. Maybe it'll help them. And so we created this little microsite, Orli Shaham Mozart.com, and we basically started putting out a movement a week of a Mozart sonata that we were in the process of editing. And over time, we started making the videos, you know, a little bit more interesting with some commentary that goes along with them, and maybe helps a little bit to kind of understand what it is that we're, you know, what it is that I think of the piece, maybe some of the things that I think of when I'm playing the pieces. And, you know, it's incredible. A year into it, we're still doing them. Oh, in the last few months, we've occasionally done something a little bit different, you know, to celebrate Chopin's birthday, for example, or, you know, Beethoven's birthday. But we still, 18 sonatas, you know, do the math, 3 movements each. We still have more weeks of movements to go.
Well, it's amazing. And one of my favorite things is what you were just talking about a little bit, like that the videos themselves, both in the descriptions underneath the videos and then embedded into the performances themselves, have these wonderful sort of personal commentaries from you. And I think it's so interesting, just sort of interesting thoughts about, you know, sort of, you know, for example, one of the ones I was watching today about one of the minor sonatas, and talking about how it was very rare for Mozart to write in minor keys, and here's some theories about why, and your thoughts on why, and sort of here's why he might have gone into some minor keys at this point in his life. And to me, it's just a really fun and integrated way to sort of understand the music that we're listening to, as opposed to just sort of a performance video. So I just think it's great. And for anyone who hasn't checked them out, definitely, I know they're on YouTube. I know that there's been some on Instagram and various other sites as well. And I put the link to the website in the chat if anybody's curious to check out the website that Orli mentioned. And I can't remember, did we decide we're going to watch a movement from one of them now, or at
Yes,
least a portion of a movement?
I think we're going to actually watch the A minor sonata. So one of the only 2 minor sonatas, very intense music. And this will be the first movement of it.
Great. Okay, well, let's take a listen.
I tell you, just listening to that one leaves me breathless. I don't even
Wow.
need to play it.
Um, Amazing. And what I love also is just your interpretation is just so thoroughly thought through and just meticulously crafted. I love it. It's like everything is intentional and I don't know, it's amazing. Um,
Thank you.
and we got some great comments about the commentary going through. And hello, Milo. Um, and we're going to get to see a feature of Milo very shortly. Before we leave Mozart, we had a question come in from Fiona who wanted to know if Mozart did indeed write all the scores himself and like go through all that work, or if he had someone helping him, because she says it's almost impossible to imagine how he could get it all down on paper.
You know, he was really good at it. And one of the things that I've kind of become obsessed with lately, it's a really good question, is his autographs. I've been looking at a lot of the autographs. And when I recorded the C minor piano concerto K491, I actually looked at a bunch of different facsimiles of the autograph to see what he was thinking. Because often in the piano concerti, for example, he would write the orchestral parts, but he actually didn't bother to write the piano part because he was going to play it and he knew how it went already. So it's interesting to see it in one like the C minor, again in a minor key where he's really struggling, and he actually wrote down a lot of it, and there's lots of crossouts, which is really unusual for Mozart. But
Yeah.
what he would do generally, occasionally he might have given some instructions to somebody else to write out parts, but it would be the piano parts that he'd leave out because he was going to play them himself, and the rest he was really very quick, and he had a lot of shorthand methods. So, you know, there's no cutting and pasting, but there are ditto marks, and there's, you know, please go back again and play from the sign here, or, you know, take these measures again, or those kinds of marks that he could give the editors.
Yeah, I feel like it's a whole study unto itself, like Mozart's transcribing of his own music and how that worked, and corrections or not corrections. I feel like we could talk about Mozart forever, but let's move on to Beethoven. Why don't we? I believe it was last year was Beethoven's official 250th birthday, right?
Yes.
But obviously there were, you know, tons of worldwide celebrations planned that had to get scrapped or moved or
yes,
whatever. And you know, you wrote an interesting essay last month that was featured on the Pacific Symphony blog called "Why Beethoven," and it basically talks about exactly that. Why Beethoven? What makes him so special? What makes him so endearing to, you know, people around the world for centuries? And one of the things I thought was really interesting was you talked about an encounter you had with Charles Schulz, who created Peanuts, and sort of his iconic character who would always play Beethoven, Schroeder.
It's right over my shoulder over there on that little bag. You've got Schroeder and Beethoven facing off next to the piano next to me.
And you shared, you know, how you asked Charles Schulz the question, you know, why Beethoven? And I love the answer. Could you tell us a little bit about what that was like and sort of what his thoughts were?
Well, I mean, this is one of my favorite stories to tell anyway, because my meeting with him was probably one of the highlights of my life. He came to a concert I did at the Santa Rosa Symphony. He was a big supporter of the symphony. He came to all the concerts. After I performed in the first half, he asked to meet with me at intermission, and we had this incredible, I don't know, maybe 20-minute conversation that I still remember word for word 25 years later. And I asked him a number of questions because I really grew up with Peanuts. Peanuts was such an important part of my childhood. I was born in Israel and I came to America in the second grade, and I learned English by reading Peanuts. You know, I was sure that people said good grief, that was a normal thing that people said a lot, and I, because I was coming from another language, I thought it was pronounced good grief. You know, it was really such a part of who I was. And so I asked him a couple of things about that. And I also asked him, you know, why he chose Beethoven, if Beethoven was his favorite composer. And he said, in fact, you know, no, Brahms was his favorite composer, but Beethoven's just funnier. And I've spent, you know, the last 25 years or so thinking about that incredibly wise answer and why he's so right about that. What is it about Beethoven it's funny? You know, and there's a lot of things. And in this little essay, I talk about it. I actually wrote this essay on December 16th, on Beethoven's birthday, thinking about him. And I'm just going to read you sort of the end of it, which is the ultimate answer to the question, why is Beethoven funny? Beethoven's funny because we are. Those jagged sforzandi, the overwhelming dynamic contrasts, the relentlessness of pulse, the endless obsessive struggles over whether a pitch is this one or that one, over and over again within a piece, the drawn out, arduous efforts to bring a dominant finally down to the tonic after 20 long minutes of music. These resonate with us as labors we deal with throughout our lives and within ourselves. Beethoven reminds us that occasional transcendence is possible. I mean, I don't know that we transcend quite on the level he does, but at least he gives us hope.
I love that. And Alexi has posted a link to the full essay for those of you. You can go check it out after this. It's really beautifully written. And I think, I don't know, a perspective on Beethoven I had not really thought about, which I think really resonates with me. And, you know, right before this, you and I were talking, you know, I mentioned a topic I wanted to touch on, and you said, oh, this is like one of my favorite things to talk about, which was, you know, we talk about Beethoven as this sort of monolithic, you know, titan for all musicians and all music lovers. But, you know, in particular for pianists, I think he has a really important sort of place in the history of the piano as an instrument and the history of piano composition, and sort of how he influenced what came after him, both in terms of composition and the actual instrument. And I wonder if you could just sort of tell us a little bit about your thoughts on sort of what that means.
Yeah, well, you know, Beethoven, as I was saying with Mozart, that he sort of started in his life the wild west of pianos and seeing what the instruments were. Beethoven was really in the heyday of that. And he was what today we would refer to as an early adopter of technology, right? He was like the first one out to get that new iPhone piano or whatever. And to test out that new pedal, to find out about those new extra notes on the bottom, or, you know, this new mechanism for the escapement on the keys, that kind of thing. And he was constantly in talks with piano makers of the day saying, look, here's what we need. Here's the kind of sound we want. Here's what I'm looking for. And they were really building to his requests. And he was not afraid of experimenting. So if you look, for example, at his piano sonatas, another incredible monument, those 32 sonatas, he's constantly playing around with usage of pedal in a way that nobody had even thought of doing. And he's also just expanding the language of the instrument in terms of pitch range. He's the first one to really begin to make the piano. So Mozart, Haydn, you know, they use the keyboard instrument to mimic the sounds of the others. But Beethoven was really the first one to make the piano sound like an orchestra. And you could see that especially in late Beethoven. It became such a, like, you know, opening of Hammerklavier or something I'm thinking about, where just the enormous pitch range that this instrument is capable of, and the variety of colors all at once. And that idea loomed large for the rest of the 19th and frankly 20th centuries in terms of how people think of how to write for the piano. Really, he was the one who laid it down for us.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, obviously we're still feeling those impacts today, which is pretty incredible. And, you know, we're talking about the 250th birthday, plans have gotten shifted. Do you have any plans? Does Café Ludwig have plans that have maybe are still in the works and maybe have just been shifted a little bit to commemorate this occasion?
Well, I definitely have some plans. I'll be playing his second piano concerto a bunch of times over the next couple of months. I'll be in Vancouver, Washington, so not that far away from all of you, at least as far as I'm concerned here in New York.
Mhm.
I'll be in Detroit, also playing that same concerto. It's a it's a pandemic-sized orchestra, so that's one of the reasons it works. Right, we're all trying to program
Yeah.
for whatever the rules are wherever we are. And Café Ludwig will move some of the things that we've done as well. We're actually very excited at Café Ludwig that we are beginning. It's beginning to look like I may be able to be there with you all before this, before the summer is done, and we can actually do a live streamed concert. So more details still in the works, but it's looking very good, and I am fully vaccinated, which I'm very
Yay.
excited about. Yeah.
And we had a question from Teddy towards the beginning of the hour. Just if you could just give us the Reader's Digest version of what Café Ludwig is for those who aren't familiar.
It's the best thing in the world. So, Café Ludwig is Pacific Symphony's chamber music series. We do 3 concerts throughout the season, one in the fall, winter, and spring, and they're done in the smaller theater, in the Samueli Theater at the Segerstrom, and it's done on a Sunday afternoon at 3. Very light atmosphere. There are pastries and coffee and tea, but also I host the concerts, and I talk about the program as we're going, and just have wonderful, very intimate, spectacular chamber music making with all of the players from the symphony. So it really is. It's been such a highlight of my life during the past 13 years. I do a lot of concerti, I do solo work, but to be able to have chamber music, especially with such incredible musicians as you guys, on such a regular basis, that really feeds me. I don't know about you, Ben, but during the pandemic, a lot of my friends have been saying, "Oh, I can't wait to have dinner. I can't," and yeah, I can't wait to have dinner. I'm with you, but I really can't wait to play chamber music. That's what I
Totally.
really can't wait for.
Well, and I know all of us, with the symphony who get the opportunity and the good fortune of getting to work with you on a regular basis, it's just such a special thing to develop a relationship like that. You know, I mean, it would be great to play a one-off concert, but getting to do sort of things over time and really sort of learn about each other as musicians and people is so special. And for myself, like during the pandemic, I have found myself sort of thinking back on some of my favorite musical memories, in this time when we can't really be together doing it. And I
Mhm.
keep coming back to like you and me playing the Poulenc Sonata together at a Café Ludwig performance, and particularly the second movement, and just really feeling that
Cool.
connection and with each other, but also with the audience, and sort of drawing people in. And I cannot wait for that to start again.
It's such a special environment also with the audience because it's a smaller theater and because there's the talking. I really feel like, I certainly don't know everybody in the audience, but I feel like I do at this point.
Totally. And in just a little bit, we're going to be talking about some very exciting sort of Cafe Ludwig projects that will tide us all over, hopefully, a little bit. I'm excited to talk about those. Before we get to that, we have a short clip and a longer clip. One, we got a little cameo from Milo, but we're going to show a video of a movement that you recorded of a Beethoven sonata at the Kaufman recital, from a Kaufman recital. And we've also got a video of Milo in the hall reacting live to the music. Can you sort of tell us a little bit about Milo and his relationship with your playing?
Well, Milo, who I was holding up before, is now in his usual spot, which is sleeping under the piano. Milo is about to be 15 years old, which I think I did the math. I think that makes him 99. So he's been sitting under that piano for 99 dog years and feeling, he's just a music lover. And during this pandemic, because he's definitely gotten older during this time, he has certain limitations, and we're just here with him all the time. So when I went to record that sonata at Merkin Hall, I had to bring him with me because he can't stay home by himself anymore. He doesn't even know how to do that. Plus, he's traveled. He came to Café Ludwig, 13 years ago. He was already at Café Ludwig when he was just a puppy. So he's traveled the world. He knows his concert halls. So did you want to show that video first? This is Milo.
Yeah, why don't we show that first?
He's walking around the hall while I'm recording. one of
I
the things I
love
love
that.
about that video is he's so musical. Did you notice how the first 8-bar phrase he went one way, and then as soon as the phrase changed, he went the other way?
Also, like, first of all, what a lucky puppy. And second of all, I remember our first Cafe Ludwig rehearsal, and he was there underneath the piano, and he is amazing. And he also let us know that he was in charge. And once we all accepted that, everything was going to be great. But he runs the rehearsal, and I love it.
Runs our life at home too, but you know, it's all worth it. All I can say is that it's my deep and abiding hope that I am good enough in this lifetime that I get to come back as Milo in the next one.
So can you tell us a little bit about the actual performance we're going to hear now?
Yeah, so I recorded a couple of solo recitals this year because solo recital is easy to record in a pandemic. Nobody else needs to be in the room. I recorded them at Merkin Hall, and Kaufman Music Center presented them as part of their Piano Dialogue series. And there were some of the Mozart sonatas were here as well, but it was also the idea was Mozart dialoguing with other composers. So one of the programs was that Mozart C minor piano sonata that I was referring to before, and Beethoven's C minor Pathétique sonata, which in many ways is a reaction to the Mozart. And I think we're going to hear the third movement from that sonata from the performance at Merkin.
Great. Buckle up. Yay! I also love sort of hearing that back to back with the Mozart. It's interesting because you were talking about how sort of it's sort of a response to that in some ways. And it's also interesting to me that, that's the final movement of the Pathétique. And it sort of ends it's like, okay, now we're done.
Very Beethoven,
and,
right?
and the
Oh, all those
Mozart was much
struggles.
more like, oh, it's going to end. Oh, it's going to end. It's coming. It's coming. And the Beethoven was like, all right, we're done. Anyway, that was gorgeous. Amazing.
Thank you.
So skipping forward a few centuries now, one of the projects that I was sort of hinting at earlier that we've been working on in relation to Café Ludwig that's been really fun and sort of been a fun way to connect, like with you and me and Dennis and Warren, our new principal cellist, has been a recording and commissioning project through Café Ludwig. Can you tell us a little bit about what's been going on and how that got started?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in September, October, we started to try to plan, although it was so difficult to plan anything, what Café Ludwig might look like this year. And of course, none of it actually looked the way that any of us thought, because none of this worked out. None of this pandemic has worked out the way anyone thought. But one of the things that that occurred to me at the time was that we could commission a work that would actually embrace this crazy Zoom world where, I'm in New York and you're in California, and, one musician's here and one musician's there. And how do you deal with that and get a composer to actually respond to this new format in a way that it was intentional. Here we were all, as musicians, we were all struggling with, wow, I just can't do chamber music. I can't, because none of it was made to fit the situation. And one of our wonderful, incredibly generous donors for Café Ludwig, Dot Nelson, said she would help us out with commissioning a piece, which I was so grateful for. And I asked the composer Margaret Brower, who is kind of a tour de force. She's from Cleveland. She was the head of the composition faculty at Cleveland Institute for a long time. Been composing forever and had her pieces played everywhere. She's in her, I think I'm allowed to say she's in her early 80s, and yet she was so ready to jump on this new situation and figure out how to balance things and how to write for this crazy way where, we can't all record at the same time. We have to record separately and put it together. And she actually wrote a piece that really deals with all of our experiences of this pandemic. And it's called Parallel Isolations, which I love as a concept. And it has these different sections, which, we all know this, the emotions have just been more intense during this time, right? The highs have been higher, the lows have been lower, and the quickness of the fluctuating is it's enough to make your head spin and many other things. And she really deals with that. So each section of the piece is very specifically one of the emotions that we've all felt, but she gives it differently to the different instruments and lets us have our parallel isolated reactions to these times. So wonderfully, it's for flute and alto flute, which you play, and violin, which Dennis King plays, and cello, which Warren Haggerty is playing. And I did the piano part. And so I recorded the piano part first before you guys were able to get to your recording, which is already one of those, pandemic sort of logistical puzzles that's that we're all getting tired of playing. But in this case, I was thrilled to do it because it was just, first of all, okay, the first thing that's really exciting was we had a rehearsal. We had a rehearsal on Zoom, right? And we all got to kind of hang out and see each other. Did you want to share that picture of us having our rehearsal? This picture, I'm afraid, was before Dennis showed up to the rehearsal. So Dennis, we don't mean to leave you out of this, but this was, we were here in this room and we had the composer with us, and yet there she is, Margaret Brower at the top, and me and Warren. But we're just having the greatest time, basically just talking with each other about her piece, and each playing little parts for her and getting her, the way you would with a composer under normal circumstances, except we're just doing it on Zoom. So first there's that, and then when I was doing the video, when we were recording this, I recorded this again at Merkin Hall, which is here in New York and kind of easy for me to record in. And I had them do the classic, like just leave a couple of cameras out there. But I also thought it would be really interesting, because the piece is so much about emotion, raw emotion. It would be really interesting to ask the cameraman to try to embody some of the emotions. And as I say, different sections of the pieces are talking about different emotions. Some of them happy, and some of them not. Some of them anxious, and some of them sort of more calm. So what you're going to see is a few videos. This is all process, work in progress stuff, totally uncut. I just wanted you to see some of the takes that we did, especially for the camera, where I asked the videographer to kind of react to the emotion of that particular part of the music through the camera work. So I think you're going to see four little sections. Take two.
I think this will work, yep.
Take 14.
That is so cool. And what everyone else might not realize is that, so as Orli mentioned, we, Dennis and Warren and I all recorded subsequently and had sort of a mix of, well, we had Orli's piano part that she had already recorded, and we had in some spots a click track to help us sort of with some of the counting. So I've become very familiar with the audio of what Orli was doing, but it's really cool to get to see the visuals and see how the camera crew sort of interpreted that. That was very, very cool.
I think it's going to be a terrific piece when we put it together. We're going to release it as like a Café Ludwig short at some point, as soon as we get everything edited. So keep an eye out for that one. I think that's going to be really great.
Yeah, and the other fun thing is that the rest of the other three of us musicians recorded for COVID reasons outdoors in Sherman Gardens in Corona del Mar, and so it's just a beautiful setting. That's a really nice also contrast to your concert hall, and then you have this beautiful sort of gardens with colonnades and things. So I think it's going to be really great. So I want to discuss, we're obviously running a little short on time, but I want to make sure we talk about another project that you do that's close to your heart, and that is also sort of close to my heart because I've been a guest a few times on it, and it was sort of a formative thing for me as a young musician, which is the NPR show From the Top. You're a regular host of From the Top, and obviously I perform and host the show. And so can you just sort of fill us in on what From the Top is and why you think it has had such a wonderful success and longevity on the air?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting program. So the idea is to showcase young musicians and to give them an opportunity to perform for an audience, and to to have this collaboration with the host, whoever it is. I'm one of the regular guest hosts, but it's also the mission of the organization is really to give these musicians like a training ground in. In their future performing career, but also to make them wonderful musical citizens. So I was most impressed by the program that the first time I hosted, we would do a concert in an actual concert hall with the kids, but then with interview as well as playing, because it is radio and NPR at that. But we would also go out and do some kind of incredible outreach. So I went with a group of kids once to a home for the blind, and we made music together. Or we went to a nursery school, and we created a concert program for preschool aged kids together for them. And this year during the pandemic, they've pivoted wonderfully to these other shows. As they started with what they called blanket fort shows, where you cover yourself up with a blanket so you can record your radio. And we did a few where I was recording from my closet, and my incredible engineer was my husband. And the kids were all over the country. And because in a sense it's kind of opened up the show this year, that the kids don't have to arrive in a particular place. So the talent pool has been huge. I feel like the level of the kids performing this year has been even higher than before, which is incredible. And I've done some shows with them also, or some work with them on Zoom, working with the kids on career development. And like I say, being good musical citizens of the world. I think what they're doing is such an important mission. And not only that, it's also incredible for the listeners and getting that word out and the connection with the audience. And the only experience that I had at that point in the fall when I was recording a show, playing chamber music, was actually with some of these From the Top kids. We were recording here in New York, and we were allowed to be in person. It was my first time making music with other people, and it was just so special at that point.
Yeah, and I think what you're talking about in terms of being good musical citizens, and I don't know, I think that's so important and something that's so often overlooked in music education, especially historically. I think it's getting better, but the idea that at a music school or even in an environment like From the Top, that we're not just training people to become an orchestra musician and sit there and that's all they do and that's the end, or any number, a chamber musician playing concerts, right, and full stop, that's it. I think the idea that music can and should be taken beyond the concert hall and used really to connect us in a variety of ways with other musicians and non-musicians is so important. So I think it's great that From the Top and that you are doing that with people at that age.
And if you all want to listen over the next few weeks, so From the Top it's on NPR. You can find it on podcasts. Over the next few weeks, they're going to rebroadcast, I think, 4 of my shows, 2 of the pandemic shows and 2 previous live ones. So if you tune into From the Top in the next 4 or 5 weeks, most of those weeks I'm the host.
That's amazing. And we have a clip from a performance from one of those that I'd love to share. And can you tell us something?
I picked this one for you, Ben, because it's the flutist.
I'm so excited.
And she was so awesome. So her name is Nadira Navruzov, and she is a high school senior. And she introduced me to a piece, and I have to tell you that every minute that I was playing this piece with her, this is a Gobert fantasy, every minute that I was playing with her, I was thinking, oh, when can I play this with Ben? When can I play this with Ben?
Please.
Enjoy.
Love it. Firecracker.
Nice. I love that piece. We
Oh,
gotta do
me
it.
too. And spoiler alert, he has some wonderful sonatas for flute and piano too. The first sonata is just amazing. So beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Orli. I cannot even describe how special it is for me personally to get to spend an hour with you. And I know for everybody else, I can't wait till you can actually be out here with us in person, but this is definitely helping tide over my Orli withdrawal from the last year. So
yes,
thank you
likewise
so
for
much.
the Ben withdrawal over here.
And thank you to everybody for coming and sharing this hour with us. You know, as I say a lot, this, you know, is so special for us as musicians too, because I think I can speak for most of us when I say that we got into music to have connections with the audience and with fellow music lovers. And so getting to do that, even in this format, is just so, so special. So thanks for joining us. I will be back, I think, in a couple weeks. Dennis will be here next week with some very special guests that you can read about on the website. And thank you all for spending your Wednesday evening with us.
And I can't wait to see all of you in person. I miss all of my Café Ludwig audience. So next time we can see each other, we can have a big cheer for the time we spent.
Yay! And everyone, keep an eye out for the Parallel Isolations video and recording that should be coming out in the next couple months. And in the meantime, everybody stay safe and thank you.